Is a leader better to have higher, to show the sense of guilt, or is it better to have like a strong
That's a really good question. For an episodic show like Star Trek, it's better to have no memory. No, that's a joke because there is no continuation. But in real life, I think I'd have to side with you stick with your decision and you move on, which is the latter, I think, of what you said, right?
Yeah.
And the reason why is because you don't want someone who's going to fall apart because of all the decisions they've made, whether the bad or good. You're going to make bad decisions. You're going to make good decisions as any leader. Yeah. Any leader throughout history has made bad decisions and good decisions, right? And I think that if you harp on the negative ones, you'll never make any more good decisions, or you'll make very little good decisions anymore in the future. And
well, you become crippled. It's the whole. Well, it goes back to like the Dostoevsky, like Crime and Punishment, like the guilt of your actions overwhelm you at one point.
Yeah.
And to a reflective person, you might not even think that you are a reflective person, but I think all leaders might experience something, but maybe not. Maybe it's good to have like a person who's just callous, straight to the point, utilitarian for his crew, right?
It's a hard one. I think there's two sides.
There's no right answers to this.
No, there's no right answer.
We're just brainstorming here.
But I think I don't think it should be maximized on either side of that continuum, because maybe it should be closer to the no remorse. I can't think of a better word. Because you can learn from your mistakes too, right? And if you're not willing to learn from your mistakes, you may make the same ratio of good versus bad in the future, but you won't make better decisions. I think you get to better decisions based upon some development of your bad decisions. Some like, okay, why did that go the way it did? If you're blindly like, I'm just going to keep going.
Yeah.
You might do the 50-50 thing. Fine. That's fine. But that's not good. That's not a good leader, in my opinion.
No, you can't be iffy. And you can't it was just interesting because like the moral weight of a decision also determines your memory of it, right? Picard had no memory of this, almost. Which means that it wasn't a very heavy decision on his part. Or
it was selectively covered up by his brain. So that was my question to you, is I think for humans, in order for humans to exist and to keep moving, I think you have to bury things.
I don't think. Do you think you bury things, dude? I think it's always there. You're not. I don't think Picard's that dumb where it's like, oh, I don't like. He just has no memory of the past. It was just an interesting thing because like maybe it is good to have short-term memory.
The mind shuts off parts of your memory for good reason.
So like, what is it in basketball? There's a thing called like a shooter's memory.
Okay.
So if you shoot like 0.48, which is horrible, right? And then a shooter's memory like is short, so you can get on fire real quick.
Yeah.
And so you can go shoot 8 for 8 the next time.
Yeah.
So it's like to have a shooter's memory might be a good thing to have, where the past there's no reverberating effects of the past onto your current decision making. It's always going to be independent of one another. Right. So that might be a good thing what Picard is. He has a good shooter's memory where it's like the past, every single decision that he does is independent of the past because he just calm and collected the whole time, right?
Yeah.
There's no oh shit, the Ferengi fiasco in the past is disrupting my moral code right now. Like there's nothing of that. They just straight to the decision, and then you make the whatever moral act of destroying a starship of like millions of people or whatever. It doesn't affect you, and you have no memory of it because it's like, of course, that's what I've done. Let the dead rest.
Let the dead rest.
Let the dead rest.
Well, okay, so I agree. The shooter's memory thing is really good. I like that. But I will say, if I try to remember in my own mind, I can only look at my own mind. I can't look at anyone else's, right? If I try to go back in time to bad times in my past, I really have to dig in order to relive those moments. And I think that's a survival mechanism. I think that's what I'm trying to get at. Is like, I can remember good times very easily, but if I want to remember bad times, it's more like the effect of the bad times there, but not the bad time. Meaning, like, does that make sense?
It goes back to morality is visceral. It's just trained weights. You don't experience the concrete events in your mind. You just experience the reverberating effects of those things.
Yeah, the weights.
Right? The weights. The shooter's mind is even more independent. It's like the weights are almost unaffected because he doesn't even remember the shit. The events don't change his weights too much, right?
So my argument is Picard had the weights and he became a better captain because of this decision, but he can't remember what happened. Or it's very hard for him to replay that memory. That's what I would say happened, because of how I see he is now. Because you don't get to see how he was back then.
Right.
I see how he is now as a commander, and I think that probably heavily adjusted his weights, his neural network.
I see.
But I don't think he can relive it as easily as we think he can as a viewer, because we can't, in my opinion. It's hard for me to go back and think of myself when my dad was like going through his shit. It's hard for me to pick out a moment and be like, oh, I remember he was a complete dick at this moment, right? But I can remember, like, the weight. I can feel the weight of it, though. Does that make sense? I can feel that. I don't know if that's a better.
Well, you're replaying a concrete thing, like through like the headache machine, right?
Yeah.
But you have your own self headache machine, right? You have this ball that you sometimes entertain. This little, you open up the your drawer and there's like that ball, and you're like, fuck, like the ball's getting me.
Yeah.
But, like, maybe we should build like these balls for all the global leaders.
Maybe.
Right?
Maybe.
Give them a headache. See what happens.